Jesus told a parable about a woman who lost a coin. The story, recorded in Luke 15:8-10, tells us that the woman swept her house and searched carefully until she finally found it. She then invited her friends to rejoice with me. I have found my lost coin. Hello, friends. This is Kurt Ritchie, your host for the Encounter Life podcast. I want to sincerely thank you for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this particular episode. Today, we are going to be doing something a little different than what our listeners have come to expect. We are going to discuss the subject of Christian ministry in America. I'm also going to introduce a concept to which most are probably unfamiliar. I'm going to attempt to connect this somewhat obscure concept with how the Lord is speaking to my heart concerning my life and ministry. This is going to test my storyteller skills, but I think the potential benefit outweighs the risks. It is my hope that before I finish, you will be encouraged and challenged to think deeply about how ministry is done and what your role in ministry might look like in the future. Today, I invite you to come along with me as we go back in time. We are going to look at the stories of two men. Both helped save lives. One in the spiritual sense, and the other in a physical sense. One helped reshape modern church ministry. The other helped reshape the design of World War II aircraft. Their careers were vastly different, as were the times in which they lived. These men are from two different generations. However, it is my belief that when I study these two men and what made them notable, I believe there just might be a connecting thread that could help to shape the future of my ministry. Back in the 1970s, a young, ambitious 22-year-old pastor by the name of Bill Hybels launched a brand new church, Willow Creek Community Church, located in suburban Chicago. This church utilized a brand new methodology to reach its community. This new idea borrowed marketing techniques used in the world of business. In hindsight, though there's no record of anyone in church leadership having done so, one might have suspected that business management expert and proponent of the stakeholder theory, Peter Drucker, had been brought on staff to oversee this revolution in the ministries of the local church. The goal was to strategically research residents of suburban Chicago in order to determine why people didn't attend church. What his team of researchers learned was that people thought churches to be boring, irrelevant, uninteresting, and unengaging. Then, based upon the scripture found in 1 Corinthians 9:22, I have become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some, they created methods and styles of ministry that would overcome those objections and appeal to those same suburbanites. This philosophy of ministry and the resulting outreach strategies and stylistic changes would lead to what became known at the time as seeker-sensitive churches. I should pause here to note that the term seeker-sensitive was met with almost immediate condemnation among some church groups. However, as the years went by and the numerical growth of Willow Creek Church became glaringly obvious and undeniable, many church leaders adopted the methods while divorcing themselves from the highly divisive labeling. The seeker revolution drove a deep wedge into the church in America. So, what became of all of this? Well, a generation later, this is my seasoned observation. Seeker-sensitive methods are the norm, but seeker-sensitive terminology is not. Nagging questions, however, remained. Some leaders understood the danger of the seeker-sensitive movement and methods. They acknowledged the potential risk of crossing an invisible balance point where the weight of methods would overpower the sanctity of the message. Jude 3 tells us that the gospel is entrusted once and only once into the safekeeping of the saints. The sobering reality is we dare not think that we can tamper with it, tweak it, or twist it without consequence. Wise men have always recognized this truth and now stand as sentinels against forces that threaten it. As this movement proved to be a very successful method to generate numerical growth, leaders would ask, was there or should there be a boundary to our methods? In the future, we would look back and see that we had indeed successfully built large communities of like-minded friends, but somewhere along the way, the core of the message, things like sacrifice, holiness, living modest and simple lives, these things had been lost along the way. Well, here we are, 50 years later, and seeker-sensitive philosophies and ministries are mainstream. They are the norm. Though the term seeker-sensitive has long ago been dropped, the methods and style that seemed so revolutionary back then have, in fact, become the traditions that leaders now fight so fiercely to defend and perpetuate. It is these new traditions and the methods from which they were born that I would like now to offer up for our consideration. I would like to propose a simple idea that will help us identify and reach those who are not seekers, those who have never made it into our churches and, most likely, never will. These are people that are not looking for comfort and convenience. They're not looking to be entertained. They are not trying to unravel deep theological mysteries. They aren't concerned about style. They are simply just trying to survive, just to keep their head above the waves that threaten their very survival. Before I introduce my second person of interest, please give me just a moment to be so bold as to make a prediction. 50 years from now, and I'll be long gone by then, 50 years from now, in the post-seeker-sensitive era, I believe the American church will look nothing like what it does today. The styles, the music, the methods used for evangelism are going to be vastly different than how we experience church today. Monumental change is coming. I would now like to introduce you to a Jewish mathematician named Abraham Wald. In 1938, he escaped Nazi persecution of Jews living in Eastern Europe and moved to the United States. During World War II, Wald, who had become a professor at Columbia University, ultimately proved to be a very valuable part of the Statistical Research Group, a collaboration of top scientists who helped solve complex problems facing the United States military. Wald's major contribution to this vital military program was the introduction of an idea that became known as survivor bias. War-torn and heavily damaged U.S. military aircraft were routinely being flown back to the States from all over the world. I have a personal connection to one of these heavily damaged World War II planes. My father actually returned home from his 2.5 years serving in the European theater as a passenger on a nearly destroyed but still airworthy B-17. Considered good for scrap metal, these airplanes would be recycled to once again be built into new military vehicles and equipment. However, before that process would begin, personnel from the Statistical Research Group would study these planes and make careful notations plotting the exact location of each bullet hole. A pattern began to emerge. As a result, it was determined that the areas on the airframes that had sustained the most bullet holes should be armor reinforced when building new aircraft. Once implemented, this process, however, did not produce the expected results. We were losing just as many planes as before. Just as many crews were perishing. Enter our Jewish mathematician, Abraham Wald. He suggested a significant change. He believed that placing the armor reinforcing where returning planes had sustained damage produced an error created by, are you ready, survivor bias. Sure, these planes had suffered severe damage, but Wald noted they made it back. So, instead of putting armor reinforcing where the bullet holes were, Wald recommended that new airplanes be reinforced where they weren't, because airplanes hit in these spots apparently didn't make it home. I would suggest that the same kind of misjudgment can and does happen in our regard to our own spiritual experience. This story is hauntingly relevant to how we do ministry. I'm not going to continue with boring explanations about statistics and airframe construction. You're all thanking me, I'm sure. But rather, I'm going to shift now to what I believe could be a significant rethinking about the target of our soul winning. It is time to merge together what we know about the work of Bill Hybels and Abraham Wald. I would posit that after 50 years of implementing seeker-sensitive methods into virtually every facet of what we do and say within the church, I fear we have become completely blinded by survivor bias. We have done everything possible to overcome every excuse and objection a seeker might have, while simultaneously ignoring those whose life experiences have left them completely unable to make the trip to the front doors of our churches. I have a few ideas that I might share later about the identities of such people. For the next few moments, I'm not talking about one specific church. Let me repeat that. My next few comments are not in reference to any single local church, but rather the Christian church at large. My following comments are intended only to provoke serious thought and consideration. The church and its ministries are now more convenient than at any other time in the history of the church. The battle for seekers has been won. The vocabulary we use is easily recognizable and understandable. Don't worry about learning new concepts and hearing strange words. Confusing words like atonement, sanctification, regeneration, and eschatology will never be heard. Imputation, incarnation, propitiation. Seriously? Trust me, you could spend the rest of your life in the church and probably never hear these words. Additionally, people that have been wounded by the most superficial wounds. Don't you worry, we have done everything to make sure you won't suffer another injury while serving the Lord. Churches are now pain-free. Have you been previously wounded? No worries. We have perfected the science of armor plating superficial wounds. Churches are now as relaxed and as comfortable as a neighborhood barbecue or a local coffee shop. Come and relax. Grab a latte and vibe with us to the latest Christian music. My friends, I beg you to consider this deeply. We must ask and answer the question, are the ministries of our many churches guilty of survivor bias? Are we attending to non-lethal wounds while ignoring a world that is dying without hope, without ever hearing the gospel of the cross, without ever being given an opportunity to believe? You might have heard it said, if you're going to be poor in America. I would like to borrow from this observation and restate it in a different way. If you're going to suffer as a Christian, then suffer in America. Christianity in America has been inoculated against suffering. Every discomfort has been eliminated, every objection removed. Every opinion, no matter how far away it is from biblical truth, has been affirmed. The church is polished, perfected, and problem-free. However, it bears little resemblance to thriving churches found in locations of extreme and abject poverty. Churches that are ministering the life-saving gospel of Jesus in the midst of poverty and political persecution, the likes of which most American Christians cannot even begin to imagine. What then am I suggesting? Am I suggesting the next advancement in church ministry beyond where we stand today would be to figure out what circumstances have destroyed lives to the extent that some individuals have been left behind and they have lost all hope and they're no longer even seeking answers, seeking for God, seeking peace for their troubled hearts? These people, they don't fit neatly into surveys suited for suburbanites. In this moment, we need to think like Abraham Wald. We need to not only understand survivor bias, but eliminate it. I want to find those that have given up, those that have been shot down, those that have taken heavy fire and did not make it back. Those who are just trying to survive another day. A convenient and comfortable church is an unobtainable luxury for those who are abandoned, lonely, afraid, lost, who are just going through the motions, passing through one meaningless day after another, just waiting for death to come. My friends, I believe those people are out there, and in greater numbers than what we suspect. If I may, I would like to return to the scripture we quoted in the opening of this episode. The Bible tells us that the woman that had lost the coin swept the house until she found it. I've always been fascinated with the phrase, swept the house. The entire house. When was the last time you cleaned behind and under the couch? When was the last time you swept behind the refrigerator or under the bed? Wow, just wow. What I've learned is there is a type of dirt and grime that exists nowhere else in the house. It is nasty and clingy. It is impossible to thoroughly sweep the house without simultaneously getting dirty yourself. It's exhausting, heavy work. If we are going to find valuable lost coins, we may have to get a little dirty. But for the sake of lost coins, it will be worth it all. Who is willing to join me? For far too long, the church has been polishing the silver and brass instead of sweeping the house. The time for change is upon us. Looking for lost coins may not result in the biggest church in town, but it will produce results that matter. I would like to finish with this old lesson, which I heard many years ago. There had been a major tropical storm that would strike a beautiful seacoast community. Terrible winds and surging waves rolled and pushed the waters upon the sands of the beach, leaving heavy debris upon the shore. After the storm subsided and daylight dawned, an unusual and tragic scene unfolded. Hundreds of starfish were scattered across the sand. Within a few short hours, these beautiful creatures would perish under the hot sun. As officials of the city heard of this catastrophe, they went to the shoreline to investigate. Upon their arrival, they witnessed a young boy alone on the beach. With movements that seemed intentional and urgent, the boy quickly moved among the starfish, bending over, picking up a starfish and returning it to the sea. They watched as he did this again and again. Finally, as the officials recognized the futility of the young boy's efforts, the mayor of the city walked out to speak with the boy, to explain to him the reality of the situation. Interrupting the boy's work, he spoke. "Son, look around you. Though I commend your efforts, thank you for trying to help, but there are too many starfish. You need to understand what you're doing, your hard work, it isn't going to make a difference. It isn't going to matter." Upon hearing this, the young boy reached down, picked up another starfish, but before he moved back toward the sea, he paused, looked up at the mayor, and replied, "Well, I will make a difference for this one." I hope you have understood my heart as I have shared my thoughts with you in this episode. When I first learned about the idea of survivor bias, I immediately began to consider the work to which I have devoted most of my life. I thought about how much time, effort, money, and worry I had spent caring for those who, while nonetheless were wounded, were themselves able to easily recover from their non-life-threatening struggles. I thought about the many ministries under my leadership that were unwittingly designed with a survivor bias. It was then that I concluded I needed to change my focus. I needed to be willing to get dirty, to sweep the room looking for lost and left behind coins. Oh, I'm not suggesting that the lessons learned from the seeker-sensitive era be wholly abandoned. The appeal of coffee cafes, contemporary music styles, convenient schedules, and comfortable amenities will continue. However, I am suggesting that our most difficult work may still be before us. Jesus tells a parable recorded in Luke's gospel, which concludes with this: "Go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. Go out to the roads and country lanes and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full." Thank you. Thank you, my friends, for letting me bear my heart with you in this matter. Know that I love the church and I love you, each one. I am grateful for you and your story. If this episode has blessed you, if it has challenged you, then please share it with others. And I thank you so much for your time today. If you have questions or would like more information about Encounter Church, please contact us at encounterstudiosfl@gmail.com. Let me repeat it: encounterstudiosfl@gmail.com. gmail.com. Until next Thursday morning, remember, one encounter with Jesus can change everything.